people didn't believe what you were going through until this man had to murder someone.
That part, 1000%. So I literally had my own mother say, I never thought it was that bad. I always thought you were just exaggerating.
Hi, I'm Ben Henry, founder of Light Air Media. We put storytelling first. Welcome to Casting Light Air, conversations that shine a light on the moments that shape us and transform us. Stories aren't decoration. They're how we connect, heal, and change the world. My guest today is Danielle Stovall, who's out there changing the world right now. She's a survivor, speaker, and founder of Take Your Wings and Rise and the Rise Up cultural movement. She's organizing the first Rise Up Against Domestic Violence March and amplifies voices through the National Domestic Violence Hotline Storytellers Collective. Her work helps people move from survival to wholeness, to rise, heal, and thrive. Danielle, welcome.
Thank you, Ben. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for being here and sharing your really important story. I think a lot of times these stories are in the shadows and we need to cast some light on that. Before we begin, this conversation exists to serve survivors and to fuel action. We'll touch some hard truths, frankly, not to sensationalize, but because silence protects abusers. Danielle decides what to share. If anything is hard for you, dear viewer, please don't hesitate to step away and take care of yourself, and find resources that we'll include in the description. Okay, so let's begin. Danielle, in your own words, what are you building right now, and why does it matter?
I'm building a movement, Ben. We're building the Rise Up cultural movement, and with that, we are amplifying the voices of survivors, whether they have their voice now or they don't. We are finding resources locally for these survivors to obtain the resources that they need. We're going to make legal change to the climate that domestic violence survivors have to endure as they're escaping or transitioning out of their abuse. And we are just amplifying this so that we can all heal. The more we talk about these things, the more it comes to light and the more we can heal from that.
When someone meets you today, what do you want them to feel?
I want them to feel their own light within themselves. I want them to know that there is always light within them and that they're resilient and that they're loved and that they're worthy and deserving of good things.
I met you at a happy hour and I definitely felt all those things. So whatever you're doing, you're doing it right.
Oh, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. Well, it took a long journey because I think that we all have moments that we question our own worth and past trauma, right? And repeated cycles oftentimes affirm in ourselves that we're not worthy. So I think everybody in the world deserves to know that they are worthy.
My whole bag is storytelling, and I met you and got to hear some of your story, and it struck me so powerfully. And I was like, oh, we got to get this person on camera here and give her the chance to share her story. So
thank you. Thank you.
You said that silence protects abusers. What feels important to name about your early years, and what do you want people to learn from it?
I want them to learn that oftentimes as we grow up through those cycles, we don't know that that's not normal, right? We see other people functioning differently. We see other families functioning differently, but that's the only thing we've known. So we don't know what that cycle looks like. When we step out of the cycle and it's not directly linked, right? We start to see, well, that's not the way I like to be treated. And maybe I shouldn't accept that behavior. And what is that stemming from? Or what are those responses to certain things that we have with people in conversation? Why do we react that way? What is the stemming cause of that?
What myths would you say, what myths about abuse does your story correct?
Oof. I think the biggest one is that there's life after abuse. And
Mm.
I was resilient through my life with a multitude of reasons and people, right? But the myth was that you're not going to be you're not going to be stronger afterwards. You're not going to heal from it all the way. You're going to still carry the weight of that. You're still going to have shame around that. I think that is affirmed, usually within your abuse, by your abusers, and oftentimes by people that are also surrounding you, because they're also surrounded in that chaos and abuse.
So here you are trying to organize this march. And do you want to just talk really briefly about what that, and we'll talk more later, but yeah, what is this march you're organizing?
Absolutely. So I'm organizing the Rise Up Against Domestic Violence March here in Seattle. Essentially, what we're doing is we're amplifying the voices of survivors. We are gaining and gathering local resources for those survivors and their families and advocates so that people know that these programs are out there. We are amplifying, and in every possible way, the need for change within legislation and victims' rights with the court systems and the judicial system as they move through their post-abuse or while they're still in the abuse.
So here you are organizing this incredibly important march, but you're coming from your own experiences that brought you to where you are now, for better or worse.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask you, like, what of your story do you want to share that would feel useful to others' safety and healing?
Ooh. Well, I can really just touch kind of lightly on all of it because I think it's all very important. I think that for me, my story is very reminiscent of others, right? Is that we start in a cycle of abuse that we don't know we're in. And that behavior seems normal because it's what we're used to. And then we seek out either relationships that essentially mirror, right? Those relationships that have been toxic and abusive in our past, with our upbringing, right? So I think that all of it's important. I wouldn't have taken the steps or chosen the people that I had chosen for partners had I not experienced what that was like at home when I was a kid. So the behaviors that would have been red flags to many other people were not red flags to me. And then the feeling of unworthiness, right? Is that you're in that cycle of abuse as a child and you don't feel worthy of being loved enough to not be in that situation. You're not worthy enough to feel that your life can be any different. Does that make sense? So I think it's all really important. So essentially, like a quick overview is I grew up in a home that from the outside looked really pretty. Typical like white picket fence for the most part when it came to my parents. But my mother was one of my biggest abusers all throughout my childhood up until my 30s. And that was really traumatic for me. So I tended to pick partners and I didn't realize that until I started doing the work, right? Going into therapy and actually reflecting and having these conversations with myself and my therapist and other resources, is that, wow, this was really toxic. And I always knew there was something off because the behaviors weren't the same as other, I have friends that have much different relationships with their mothers and it's not like mine. And why is that? And then I chose partners that were very mirrored and similar and had similar behaviors. And I settled for what I thought I was worth at that time. So that led me from an abusive upbringing into different types of abuse. I wouldn't that all of my relationships were not physically abusive, but they were definitely mental and emotionally abusive, which that causes deep wounds that you carry. I always say the bruises go away much
Mm,
faster than the mental and emotional wounds that you have and receive when
mm,
you're in the cycles of abuse.
hmm. Yeah, and that's so interesting because, the way you describe how, the relationships we have as children are often mirrored as adults. And that's something I had to learn about. And, I'll just real quickly share
Yeah.
my own story. I grew up experiencing domestic violence from my primary caretaker. And yeah, it was just a violent upbringing. And it took me years to understand, this concept of attachment theory,
Yes.
where the the types of relationships or the relationship dynamics you experience as an adult often mirror the the relationships you had with your parents growing up.
Yeah.
And when I read a book called Attached about it, and when I read that book, it just like opened my eyes to like, oh, this is what I've been doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's no small thing, and it's a cycle. And I think one of the hardest things in life to do is break cycles like that.
I agree. I agree. But that gift is, I say it's a gift to be given that because I think about my children, and my children may have experienced some of that cycle and they got to see some of that, unfortunately, but they also got to see that you can heal from those things and that you can be a kind person of love and light. And just like
Mm,
yourself, Ben, we get two choices in life. I feel that we get to either live in love or live in light, or we get to live in darkness. And
mm.
sometimes it doesn't feel like a choice, but it's a tough choice to make. And then you got to keep after it. It's continuous. You got to keep fighting yourself, right? And the world to stay in that space of light. Cause it's not always easy, but certainly
Oh,
gets easier
that's
every day. You
beautiful.
know, the more people that I meet like yourself and the more survivors that I meet, and they're so appreciative of the community that's being built with the Rise Up cultural movement. So it's not just a movement, right? It's a community.
Yeah, yeah. That and bringing that lightness into the world. That is what I'm trying to do here at Lighter Media. That's what it. This
Yes.
lightness. It's it's breath of fresh air. It's keeping things light during such heavy times,
Yes.
and it's also shedding light, casting light onto the darkness and the shadows, and that's what it's all
That's what
about.
it's all about.
So yeah, so you experienced a rough upbringing and found yourself falling into patterns, and
Yes.
what how did you transform?
So it's I won't get into to grand detail, but what I so my third marriage, I got engaged and we had been together for quite some time. I think we were together at like 7.5 years at that point when we got engaged. I was at the most mentally stuck place I think I'd ever been in my life. And I was severely unhealthy in the senses of all parts of my being. My health was not good. My mental was not good. My emotional was not good. My spirit was not good. And when we got engaged, I told my soon to be husband at the time, I said, I'm going to start therapy. I've done therapy on and off my whole life. And I think it would be wise that we also do therapy because I don't want to bring this baggage into our marriage, even though we've been together for so long. I don't want to bring that in there. So I started to do therapy and I started to have these amazing conversations, also very painful with my therapist. And that led to realizing that I was in an abusive mother daughter relationship with my mother my whole life, and why it always felt so, and that's such a light word to use, but why it felt so icky my whole life and why it didn't ever feel right was because it wasn't right. Um, and so I started on that journey. I got married. I felt like I was continuously evolving. I was finding new things about myself, starting to instead of being the, which had been a condition of my abuse, instead of being a quiet mouse who just would just buck up and not say anything, no matter if it was uncomfortable, I would just deal with it or stuff it down
Mhm.
and, take it. I started to have a voice. And um, not only did that cause some friction, right, with a 10-year at that point, a 10-year relationship, um,
Mhm.
but it caused friction in other areas of my life. Like my work life was shifting. I didn't feel so good to be a servant in that way anymore. I was a hairstylist for 20 years, and I was I always say I stood behind the chair to make everybody else feel good, and it made me feel good to let somebody else stand in that spotlight. I don't need it. I just want somebody else to,
Mhm.
when they walked in the door, I wanted them to walk out feeling so much better than they did when they came in. And I feel like I did that. I got that gift for 20 years. And then I had my spiritual awakening. And within that time frame, it was like all lights were on. And the lights were on. I was on the stage in a spotlight. Like, okay, you have got to not only address the things that you are dealing with continuously and continue on that path, but what do you want to actually do with this? And my spiritual awakening in the day, that day, it was a 6.5 hour time frame, Ben. I started the day knowing that I wanted to help people at a larger capacity, but I didn't know what that was like. It wasn't even touching on DV because I wasn't even talking about that because I still was carrying
Mhm.
so much shame. By the end of the day, it was like, okay, I know I need to go to Seattle. I know that I need to help people in Seattle because that's where I'm from. I've avoided that place for 18 years because I didn't want to deal with the trauma that's there. So I was able to avoid it, right? So then it forced me to step into that purpose. I had a retreat that I hosted in Washington, even though I was still living in Phoenix. Um, that opened my eyes grand scale. And then 2 months later, I sold my house. I ended my relationship, unfortunately. That had to be part of the evolution. I will always carry love for that man who is amazing. Um, and I packed up my car and here I am. And about, I want to say 2 months after I arrived, I just thought I was going to be here with doing inspirational coaching, which felt weird to me. So I transitioned to what I called a collaborative healer. And then 2 months in, I had a vision and it was like a sea of people in purple. And I was like, that's because I need to address the DV that's going on that's has gone on in my
Oh.
life. I need to also help the people that don't have the strength or the wherewithal or even know where to go to start the process to start healing. Um, and it was the scariest thing. It's the scariest thing to put yourself out there for something that is so widespread. And there is not, I hate to say this, but it's such a true fact. There is not one person that I have engaged with since I have started planning this march that has not been impacted by DV. Not one. Whether it was their childhood, whether it was a partner, whether it was a family member, whether it was a friend, everybody has been impacted to some level. And the fact that Seattle, as progressive as a city as it is, doesn't have an annual DV march, we're changing that because we need people to feel safe to come out of the shadows, that it's not scary on this side, that there is support, there's resources, and we want to show them what those resources are.
Wow.
Oh, I'm getting goosebumps.
And it's so widespread. It's almost
It
universal.
is.
But it's hidden.
Yes.
You would never know how universal it is just by flipping through the news or, just living life.
Mm-mm.
But it's everywhere, but it's hidden under the surface.
Yep.
And so with your story, you decided no more hiding.
No more hiding. I had lived my whole life in fear, whether it was from personal relationships that were abusive, right? I don't think that was an option for me anymore. It was, I had hidden already. And I feel like that was my option for Phoenix to stay there, right? It was a way for me to be like, nobody knows me here. I can have this whole different life here. And then that's where a lot of my abuse took place too. And it was like, you can't run from whatever is set to be your life. You have to face it when it comes. You can't run from it. And I had been running too long, and I just was so exhausted. I literally had a moment where I was like, I'm just tired and I don't know why I'm tired. And it's because I had been running away from people and the things that had hurt me and the places I had been where I'd been hurt. And I couldn't run anymore. I was tired. And I figured somebody's got to do it, right? Somebody's got to say, okay, I'm not afraid anymore. And I'm willing to step up and do this because other people need this, not because of me. If it was up to me, Ben, I wouldn't be doing, if it wasn't up to me, I wouldn't be doing this. And like, holy, like that would have been too scary for me. But strength within the universe and what I believe in was like, there's too many people out there that I can understand where they're at, where they've come from without judgment, and just give them a safe place to land. You know, I never ever had that. And I just feel like if I would have known the resources that were there, or there would have been marches, or there would have been things that where I knew I could find people that were like me, the shame would not have carried as long as it did. And that's what I hope with this march and this movement, is that the shame and the people to see that these people are rising in community, right? In our community, that they have community. They're safe here.
So you found your voice after having it submerged, I guess. And you transformed. You came out of the cocoon and started to feel like, oh, this is who Danielle is.
Yeah.
And old relationships maybe weren't able to keep up with that.
That's it.
Now, you mentioned the idea of like carrying shame around domestic violence. Yeah. Can you explain that?
Absolutely. So I think with my partner DV, that was my husband, and with the shame that carried around that, it was not only the shame because I had, at first I felt like when my abuse first started with him, which was pretty quick, I was telling everybody everything that was going on. Everybody's like, you got to get out of that. Like, what are you doing? Like, you don't deserve that. I'm like, no, he says he's sorry. Like, he's going to be better. He's buying me flowers. Like, he was a big gifter. He's doing all these nice things, nice gestures. Like, he really loves me. Like, he's been through, he had a rough, and I was always justifying the behavior. Right. So then I started to see friends fall away because it was just too heavy for them to burden that weight. And I didn't need to be giving it to them. Right. So then I started being silent completely. It was like, I can't tell anybody what's going on. My abuser was very strategic when he would physically assault me. He would bruise areas of my body that could be covered. So I could go to work where I worked in the public. There was only a couple occasions that he would do it where it was visible, and I would blame it on my children. Like, oh, they hit me in the eye with a sippy cup full of juice. They just whopped me right in the eye. And I'm sure people did not believe it, but I just felt this, like, this is my husband who I've picked as a partner. I've married him. I now have a child with this person who these people around me were saying, well, why would you have a baby? They don't understand that they're with DV, and a lot of people don't understand that either. And that's just because it hasn't been educated. That's another part. We have to educate people, is that my youngest daughter was a product of sexual coercion. A lot of people don't realize that is a form of DV. So I did not want to have children with my husband at the time, who was my abuser. However, the abuse cycle was, if I don't do this, he's not going to love me anymore. And I had that little self-worth that I believed that I was really not going to be loved by anybody else, and I better just buck up and deal with it, because this is love. So the shame that you carry with that is not only then the shame of being with this person, but the shame of, like, I'm with this person who's hurting me, and I know that it's not okay, but I don't know how to get out, and I can't ask for help because these people they're going to think that I'm just going to keep going back, which Also, it takes, I can't remember what the national average is, which of course is a low number, which because of reporting. It took several times to get out of that relationship, years to get out of that relationship. And the people that were there kind of sporadically were like, we're not helping you because you keep going back. So then you've got this, it's literally this just cycle that just repeats and repeats. It's like an orbit of the sun. You just can't get away from it. And
Hmm.
until you start realizing like that is not, when I started to realize that that is not my burden, what he did is not my burden to carry shame for, nor is me staying, because I made the best decisions at that time that I knew with the tools that I had, with the support that I had, with the knowledge that I had, right? With the capacity that I had, and giving myself grace. And that has really helped melt away that shame for me.
Hmm.
Not
Oh,
getting it
wow.
from other people, not getting the, oh, I'm so sorry you went through that. No, I had to give that to myself. Like, hey, you know what? Yeah, you were in that relationship, or you had done the cycles because you didn't know any different. You didn't think you were
Hmm.
worth better. You didn't know you deserved better because you had seen that for, 30, 20, at that time, 25 years, 30 years. You didn't think that you were worth anything because if your own mother, right? This is the cycle. If your own
Yeah.
mother can't love you because you're not worth loving in the mind, right? Then why should I expect a partner who didn't give birth to me to love me more than what she did?
Whoa.
You see?
That's profound.
Yeah.
Huh. So you found your voice and wanted to speak out about this, but found that that's a tricky thing for a lot of different reasons, like the shame
Mm-hmm.
that you feel. What made speaking up for you hard? Safety, shame, being disbelieved, things like that. How much does that stifle you? And how did you push through it?
So I would say at first, it was definitely shame was the leader. And then the second one is safety. So when you are a survivor of domestic abuse, like you have to always think in your mind, you have to always think like you've got to be watching your back. Somebody's always going to be, that is a huge thing. Like you've always got somebody that's keeping an eye on you. So you're always more hyper vigilant to pay attention to your surrounding. It's like you're always in fight or flight mode, even though your abuse has ended, right, directly. You are still in that mode. So for me, it was the shame, and it was the fear of safety and keeping my children safe. And then it was like, hmm, hmm. It was like the universe said, we did not get you to help other people to this point for you to not be safe. You are going to be safe. And I just trust that every single day, Ben, because that was the biggest thing. So even doing like the promo video, right? And doing interviews, it's like, okay, I don't want the fame, but I know that I'll be a public figure at some point, right? Because I'm doing, this movement is massive, and we will be carrying it nationwide. We already have plans for other cities across the country to continue the movement. Um, but it was the fears that really kept me in the shadows. But doing the promo video, it was like, all right, you have stood in the shadows, not only with your personal life, but with your work life of service, right? Where you stood behind a chair. Now is the time that you give these survivors the voice, because this is when you transition from survivor to advocate. And I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm thriving so that I can advocate for the people that are either still in survivor mode or still in the thick. I don't, and to me, it's everybody. It's seniors, it's women and men, it's all different communities. And to me, it is worth every bit of the little bit that lingers in there for safety and shame, right? The little bit that I feel like will always have there'll always be a little bit of that in there. I don't think that ever goes completely away. I think once you're impacted by something, you still carry it. You handle it differently. You look at it differently. I look at my abuse as a beautiful thing now, when even 6 to 8 months ago, I would not have said that, um, because it had a purpose.
Hmm.
It all had a purpose. In the thick of it, I couldn't have understood. And even at the time, like I look back at when I was in the middle of my abuse, I would have never been able to sit here. I didn't think I was going to survive that relationship. I would never have been able to tell you that, 5, 10, 15 years later, I would be advocating for DV survivors ever.
Hmm.
I didn't even think I would survive the next day. So I just feel like if I have this life, I got to do something with it to help other people. It's in my DNA. It's destined to be what my destiny is, and I just lean into it. So yeah, it just that washes away anything else. If I can help one person, if I can help 10 people, if I can help 20 people to heal, guess what? Those cycles start to end.
Mhm. Wow. Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's so many barriers to folks who are having to survive horrific circumstances.
Yeah.
And why is the system set up that way? You know, there's on the safety side of things, there's been reports of like rideshare
Yep.
services and assaults that happen there.
Yeah.
And it's shockingly prevalent.
Yeah.
But and I was reading this article, and one thing they mentioned is like it's probably well underreported
Yep.
because these people, the drivers have their
Yep.
addresses.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So yeah, and as I just named this as a man, I don't understand what it's like to be afraid to just walk out of the house.
Yeah. Yeah. Every day as a woman, it's a struggle. It's uh, definitely something that as women we all experience at any age, and it needs to be addressed. And we appreciate as a whole men like yourself that are safe, that aren't that way, that will also call it out when it's not right. And again, like amplifying my story and other people's stories to Ben, what you're doing is amazing.
Well, I'm not trying to center
Of
myself
course
here,
not, but I'm
and I
just
should.
just letting you know we appreciate this.
Yeah, I
That's what makes
thank
this
you.
world feel safe for women like me. That it's like, okay, there are safe masculine energies in this world, and the discernment becomes stronger and stronger the more I know who I am. And then guess what? Again, with the cycles, right? I wouldn't be sitting talking to you if I didn't feel safe. Where 2 years ago, if I still felt kind of icky, I'd still be sitting here having a conversation with you. So thank you for being who you are, because you allow, just like you shedding light on my story, you are allowing others to share their stories so that that can get to other people. So that is very important what you're doing. So no, I know you're not trying to center it around you. I just want to let you
Yeah,
know, like, that is what you offer, gives women the safety to know that we don't have to always have our eyes in the back of our head.
yeah.
Yeah.
Goodness. Well, and yeah, and so much gratitude for those words. But I I don't need a pat on the back for doing something that's just basic, like just having compassion and humanity. But yeah, much gratitude to that. But I want to spend that energy instead of the pats on the back. I want to put my hands down and lift up and rise up.
Yes.
um, so let's zoom out a little bit. So thank you so much for sharing so much of your story and yourself um, on this platform. But let's zoom out a little bit and look at things on the more systemic level. So, which systems would you say failed you,
Ooh.
and which helped?
Ooh. Systems that failed me. I don't know why that's so having such a difficult time. The judicial system failed me. So as I was escaping as I was escaping my abuser, um, I was forced to have to contemplate the idea of my child having to still go for visitation, unsupervised and overnight with my abuser, with her as a 9-month-old baby.
Oh my gosh.
And the court system basically told me that because he had not directly hurt her, that I would still have to meet him in a public place where I was assaulted many a times with him in public.
Oh my
Um,
God.
and nobody ever wanted to go with me because he was dangerous. Um, the court systems failed when they didn't look at his background and just the abuse itself. One thing that another thing that is to me is a very big fall is I don't believe that the police departments are trained properly to handle DV situations. So one thing
Mm,
that I think of long term is there will be a DV advocate to go, I don't care what the situation is. We need to have at least a couple in each precinct that go on calls like that, because most DV, I I believe that my at my address, my first address with my abuser, I think I called the police 13 times and I never not once reported it, because I knew that if they did not take him, if it was not bad enough, and I told the police the whole story, I wouldn't probably have made it out of that house. So when they would show up, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I called, but it was an accident," or "Yeah,
oh,
I called, but everything's fine now."
right.
So and it's not to no detriment of the police department. I get you're overwhelmed, but to me, how they handle even at that base level, how they operate, like, why are we not having an advocate that's like, hey, I've got 3 places that are local that we can place you. Which one of these do you want to go to? We can take you right now. You don't have to stay here. We can take your babies. We can get them out of here, and we can start the process for you. Where is the legal advocacy? We had in Arizona, there was very limited free legal advice given through a program organization through the county that was overwhelmed and couldn't serve. So systemically, like, I've seen this oftentimes too, people without children, people that are not married, filing reports, and then either falls on deaf ears, or nobody takes you seriously, or nobody believes you. My thing is that at that point I had been with this man for 7 years, and people would say, well, if he was so bad to you, then why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you get out sooner? Right? So there comes the shame circle. But like, realistically, it's that the systemic problems is that abusers are able to re-abuse you within the court systems because they still have their rights. And to me, I mean, not to get to that point, but to me, it's like, at what point we have to pause for my baby. But I think that the judicial system, the police departments, they're just not equipped to understand, like, even through the court process. Like, I get there is a there is a process that you have to follow, but why are we not helping these people? And I get it too. There are a lot of false reporting, which makes it harder for the people that, like myself, that actually had these things happen, and I see it going on both sides, is that there's false reporting, and then they don't have they don't have the wherewithal to know, like, is this person telling the truth? Is this person telling the truth? So
Right.
it goes so deep, like, why survivors should be re-victimized over, and I literally got re-victimized over and over and over again. And then that was another thing. So even post divorce, post everything, and I'm going to be very clear about this, my ex-husband is currently serving life because he took the life of the woman right after me, and so
Oh
he's
my God.
currently serving life in prison for his crime. And that would have and could have been avoided had the judicial system understood the dangers that this man posed, not just from what I had told them, but current cases that he was fighting in court against me for DV. And the court system, despite those things happening in the same state that they could look up, they still had me going through this whole process so he could see his child. So
Oh
then
my God.
post crime, I'm like, all right, I'm going to sever the rights to our child. I'm going to sever them. We're going to be done with that. Ben, it took almost 3 years even with his situation and him serving life in prison plus 17 and a half years, for me to have the rights severed to our child, she didn't know him at all. At this point, she's 8, 9 years old. It took, and the appeals process, and he's in prison having these conversations in court, and I have to fight of why it's in the best interest of my child to not have a relationship with this person.
Wow.
Why is the court systems doing this? Why are the court systems, again, like I said, just re-victimizing? And then how they do it is just, these are the things that need to change. These are the reasons why people don't leave. I literally stopped my own self. That was the other part, right? We talked about shame and we talked about fear of, and scared, being scared of your safety, right? But the fear of like, are the court systems actually going to have my back? Because if I go through all this to get away and they're just going to send me right back, or essentially I'm still going to have to be very connected to this person or not be able to get essentially away from this person, a lot of people just choose to stay because it's easier. In their minds, it's easier to stay than to fight to get out, because it is a fight. It is a fight to get out of DV. At least it was for me. It took a lot for me to get away. Years and years and years of fighting to get out. So I just 1000% understand, when they would tell me, oh, we'll just get a restraining order. What is a piece of paper going to do for me? And it didn't. He assaulted me with that piece of paper. It didn't matter. In a public place. Post-divorce. So again, and then when the police show up, right, they don't know what to do. Oh, well, I'm just going to give you this little pamphlet about domestic violence. Here you go. And send me on my way.
That's what people don't get about that whole defund the police thing, which ended up being this third rail of sorts in politics. But
yeah,
defund police isn't about we're going to get rid of public safety. It's not about like no more police, no one to call for help. It's about being more nuanced about it.
Yeah.
Like, not every call do you need a fully armed SWAT team, which is how most of the police force is trained to deal with violent situations. But a DV call maybe requires a different skill set and toolkit.
Yeah.
And so the idea is, we have the cops to handle the scary situations, but we also have, social workers with a badge who are trained and can go in and know how to handle situations like this.
Yes.
Like, the police can't handle every single situation. No one, that's too much to ask of anyone.
Yes.
So the idea is not, we're going to not fund any police. But it's more about, we're going to fund public safety with nuance, with specialties.
Yes.
And, looking at the systemic level, that's example number one of how the system is failing.
Yeah. Yep.
And thanks so much for sharing that. Oh my gosh. I wonder if there was a sense of like, people didn't believe what you were going through until this man had to murder someone.
That part, 1000%. So I literally had my own mother say, I never thought it was that bad. I always thought you were just exaggerating.
Come on.
But it makes sense because she was also my abuser.
And someone had to die for her to realize that.
Correct. And it was a lot of people in my life. A lot of people were like, oh, it couldn't have been that bad. You stayed with him for 7 years. It couldn't have been that bad. You guys had a baby together. Couldn't have been that bad. It was that bad. I mean, there were times, trigger warning, there were times where I had to lay over my oldest daughter at 3 years old so that if I got shot, that at least my daughter would survive and it would only kill me. So people saying things like, oh, well, we didn't think it was that bad. And it took him taking a life for people to realize that. And I don't want any survivor to feel that way. Everybody should feel like their voice matters. And what they have to say, there's somebody to listen and believe them without question. Because that was the hardest part of my abuse, was that my own inner circle was like, wow, well, I didn't think it was that bad. I just thought you were exaggerating because you just hated him so much. Like on the way out, right? The divorce process, getting away. Oh, well, I didn't think he was that bad. He seemed like a good guy. Well, most abusers are. Most abusers are narcissists, so they can put on a really good show and the door closes. So yeah, that was a big part for me. It was, this person had to take another woman's life who was a mother. And I feel like, Ben, honestly, a part of me owes it to her. Because had she known that she was worth more than a man that would treat her the way that he treated her, because I already knew what he was doing to her. If she would have had somebody, a girlfriend, an advocate say, you are worth more than what this person is putting you through, that may have saved her life. And to me, if I can be that light for somebody, that, hey, you're worth, and I believe you, you're worth not being in that situation. I want to do that for people. Because I think that not being believed that's why you carry the shame. Nobody's going to believe me anyway. So why? I'm just going to hold on to this shame, this little pocket of ick in my body, because nobody's going to believe me anyway. It was the same thing with my mother. A lot of people didn't understand why I had to, in a very healthy way, detach myself from my own mother. And I carried shame around that. I carried a lot of shame around that, because people are like, oh, but that's your mom. She gave birth to you. She raised you. But there's a point where you just have to create boundaries for yourself. And no matter who your abuser is, you have the right to create that boundary.
People need to hear that. Some people need to hear that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so let's move from survival to building.
Yes.
Okay. With your permission.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we gotta dig through all of it, right? Because that's how people understand that they can also do the same thing. You got to get through the rubble first and excavate it.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to start taking stuff out and digging. And as soon as you think you've got to the bottom, guess what? You might be sitting pretty for a little bit, and then you got to do some more chiseling. It's like Seven Dwarfs. We've all got those little things going,
Right.
Chipping away.
Yeah. Let's dig in.
Let's dig in.
So what would you say was the first moment when you feel like you really, truly chose yourself?
Ooh.
Was it when you drew some boundaries like you were describing?
Yes. So I think that for me, the biggest boundary was with her, with my mother. It was like, as soon as I felt like I could do that, I could do it with anybody, because this was the woman who raised me. I've known her my whole life. Like, she put clothes on my back and food in my mouth. And, being able to cut that tie for me was like, okay, I know I'm worth more than what this person is giving me. I've cut out other parts that have been really icky and abusive. And why do I need to keep hanging on to this? So it was like, okay, now and it was very hard. There's still moments where I really wish that I had a different mother, but I'm thankful because again, it landed me right here. But I think that when I really saw myself, it was like, okay, if I can stand up to her and stand up and put my own self first, and I can do this with anyone. And then it was like each step I took, it was like, okay, I'm getting a little more traction. I'm really kind of seeing not only who I am, but like I'm worth more than that. I'm not going to deal with that. I'm not putting up with that. I noticed it with my work. I noticed it in my
Hmm.
relationships, friends and my partners. Um, it was just like this evolution that just kept continuing. But I would realistically like fully see myself fully like 2 weeks ago.
What?
Like fully. Because
What
I
happened 2 weeks ago?
so I was still repeating some patterns that in business and relations, like chasing patterns of like this person is giving me cookie crumbs and I'm chasing them to like help with the march or support there, or I a friend that I really want to hang out with and they're like dodging me. It's like, what are you doing? You've done this your whole life. And I was wondering why there was all these brick walls coming with the march, right? And I'm being fully transparent, right? Is that I was wondering why we weren't getting like this. We started to gain momentum like with you and your support, but like nothing else was coming. And then all of a sudden I was doing this work and these epiphanies like was like, stop chasing it. You are worth. Stop selling yourself to people. Like you don't have to sell yourself like a classified ad to people you're working with, to people that you want to have a conversation with. Either they're gonna want to be drawn into your spirit and you're gonna have a really great, amazing connection like you and I did the very first time we met, right? It was like instantaneous. And that is the kind of energy that I invite in my world. Whereas even 2 weeks ago, it was like, I'm still inviting energy, but like having these full blown conversations and saying, well, this is what I do. And da 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 da. And this is why I'm great. Da 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 da. And I'm like, I don't need to do that anymore. I know who I am. I don't need to. And this is that cycle that we talk about, right? I don't need to prove my worth
Hmm.
to anybody because I know I'm worthy. And to me, my purpose on this planet deems me worthy, says, okay, the reason why now all these doors are opening is because you're doing the work and you're shifting, right? That mindset shift. And you're actually leaning into what you're supposed to, like where your brain should be at. You are worthy. You are deserving. You tell everybody else this. When are you going to adopt it?
Oh my gosh. It's like justifying your existence to everyone because
Mm,
you were what you were saying earlier, you were brought up and weren't accepted by your own parents. So then you're thus unworthy in general.
yeah.
And and then you're constantly on that treadmill
Yes.
and you're
Running.
not getting anywhere because you're so busy spending your energy trying to justify your existence
Yeah.
rather than trying to soar, right?
Yeah.
The other day, um I there's a couple things that happened with my little 6-year-old daughter Beanbug, and that I didn't show up fully, or um I got really tied up with work, for instance, and missed her at the bus stop, and the bus driver had to bring her. And I just felt bad, and I'm just like, "Oh, Beanbag, I'm so sorry. I will do better."
Uh,
And then she has wisdom for a 6-year-old. She's like, "Oh, Dada, you don't have to be better. You already are." I wrote that down, and I remind myself of her words every day. You don't have to be better. You already are.
that's a beautiful thing for your 6-year-old to tell you. Yeah. And
Ugh.
that's how you know you've broken your cycle because you didn't have to be the dad that you are, right? And that's the beauty of it, is that you can see within your children, that again, maybe there is some lingering aftermath, but that your children are beautiful little humans that you've brought up, and you've put little light beams into the planet that could have been a much different situation. And that's why we talk. That's why we have to address these things, because just like you said yourself, like, you experienced a very traumatic childhood that was full of abuse, and your daughter will never ever experience that, because you have shown her that she has safe parents. And that's the part too that we don't talk about our childhood because it's too painful, right? But we get to choose how we go through the rest of our lives. And you have broken a cycle, and your children, like, that is the beauty that gets to go into this world. If our world could have people like us that continue to fuel into it, and our kids get to have that, our world's going to be just fine. The darkness will not overpower it. So what a beautiful experience, and what a beautiful thing for her to tell you. And she is
I
very
love it.
wise.
She is.
Mm.
She's wonderful. Okay. So I'm curious, what practices or people or support systems helped you kind of reclaim your body and your voice? Like, how, I'm hopeful that maybe there are folks who are viewing this who might be in some situations, and maybe they can take some inspiration from this. But yeah, how did you reclaim yourself?
Mm. Ben, I had to do it on my own first,
Hmm.
because I had sought out, at least for me personally, like, I had sought out that from other people, right, to affirm that I would be okay. And I had to learn that I was going to be okay by myself. So a lot of my work I did solo. I didn't divulge a ton to the people around me, because it was like, this is my sanctuary. This is my time that I get to not only address the things that are bothering me currently, but like things that actually I've had to work through a lot in my story is very deep, and there's a lot to it. Um, but I feel like as I progress, yeah, finding yourself first, like at least being able to sit with yourself. That was the first thing for me. And then really it was a therapist, a good therapist. That was huge. I think that within the finding yourself and the therapist is that you start to establish, like, okay, these are choices that I make. There's right. We all get to make our own choices, right? So you address the choices that you've made, and then try and find the patterns, try and find where it doesn't feel good, right? And we try to modify that. So therapy, for me, it was not, I didn't have resources. Granted, it was a much different state. I lived in Arizona at the time of my DV, my partner DV. And there weren't resources there. There were, at least not that I knew of, right? So, but then there was community. It was not necessarily finding other survivors that had experienced really, really violent physical abuse. It was just finding people in community that felt safe, and actually acknowledging if somebody felt safe, and what I divulged to them if they didn't feel safe, and what I did or did not. Um, and then realize, again, I think that was, for me, those are the three key components: myself, therapy, and then community. That was huge. Um, I have a whole, what I call my soul chosen family, that surrounds me. So I have my own family, but I also have a soul chosen family that, mhm, these are the people that never ever judged me. These are the people that have seen, whether this was at the very bottom of my mental load, the heaviest point or not. These are all people that feel so safe that I know I can run to, or ask for help, or sit with and just have a conversation if I'm struggling. I don't feel vulnerable. I don't feel any level of judgment. I just feel encompassed in love. And that's so important, I think, for anybody, right? Is that we need to have the sense of community, because when we can, there's only so much, I do believe, me personally, is that there's only so much healing you can do by yourself. But I also feel the component of other people being around you that help you elevate and evolve into a different place that's healthier and your mindset shifts. I think that that is really beneficial because they definitely think all of those times that people that were older than me would say, like, you are who you hang out with. Like, if you're hanging out with people that are, toxic and that energy is no good, then it's going to bring you, it's definitely going to make you lean into that part of yourself than anything else. But if you're around people that encourage you and see you for the heart that you have, all that other stuff just fades away. It's like, you're not going to judge me because I'm a survivor. You're not going to judge me because I'm, again, trigger warning, a rape survivor. You're not going to, that's just going to be what it is. You're going to just sit with me and not look at me any different. And I've been judged my whole life. So I had to be okay with me. And that's why I'm so honest with my story, is it allows other people to know, like, there is, the reason why I'm so honest is so that people don't ever feel judged. Like, you are safe with me. All of these things I've gone through, you can come tell me, or you can come, I'll sit with you and I'll cry with you, because that community is so important. So important.
It's together we rise.
Together we rise. Yeah.
So how did those moments, you finding the support of therapy, finding your community, how did those practices become Rise Up and become your coaching work as well?
Well, so I always say, like, 20 years of doing hair will be anybody's really good experience. I mean, talking to somebody one-on-one sometimes sometimes I'd have clients for, 20 minutes, and sometimes I'd have clients for 8 hours. And people are telling you a lot. And people have always told me, even when I was a kid, they'd always say, I don't know why I tell you everything, because you just feel so safe. Like, I've always been the person people have gone to talk to, because I know what it feels like to not have that. Right. So I feel like that was the training. But really where that transition for me was, like, when I had my very first retreat, I called it the Healing Girls Trip. And I got to not only watch the women that I had on this trip heal in beautiful ways, but for me, it was like, okay, I know that all of these things I'm saying are true to these women. So now believing it in myself, and then literally just saying, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. There's not an option. I'm just going to run into it. And this is how we're going to get to it. And again, it continues to evolve, right? I never thought that I was going to plan a march when I moved here. I never thought that I'd have a co-collaborator who is also an amazing survivor and resilient woman who is amazing, and that's the community. That part too, I have to add that too, is that, like, when I would feel like I was losing when I felt like I was really losing momentum at the start of, like, the March idea coming to fruition, was that community, was having my co-collaborator on this march literally say, you're going to do this and I'm going to support you doing it. And whatever that looks like, let's do it, because people need this.
Who's your collaborators? Give a shout
Rihanna Brisker. Yes, I know we were avoiding names, but I'm like, we can say her name, right? Not only is she a local healer, just by nature, she is an amazing, amazing artist, musical artist here in Seattle, who I wasn't meant to be on that stage to be sharing in that way, but I get to be at the podium and then standing with her while she goes and just blasts out that gorgeous voice that heals people. So I definitely think that, again, I kind of lost myself in all of that, but that was the shift for me. It was like, okay, I'm very, so one thing that I've always been is very driven. I'm very focused. I like, when I set my mind to something, like, I'm very tenacious. I used to use the word stubborn. I'm very tenacious, and I'm going to keep going. Like, whether anybody shows up to the feast or not, I'm going to make it, because I want to eat it. And if you want to join, great. Let's have a great meal together and have great conversation. But I'm still going to I'm still making the meal. I'm still going to have plenty of leftovers. Like, y'all want to come over afterwards, that's fine. I just may not be sitting at that table anymore.
Talk about now what you're doing and what we want the viewers to do. Like, how can we mobilize folks? So for someone watching survivor, ally, or unsure, what's the one thing you want them to do this week?
Hmm. I want them to check in with themselves, do a full mental body and a full mental scan and a body scan of themselves, and just check in. I think oftentimes we're just so busy we don't even check in with ourselves. We can't even address the trauma because we're so busy just living life, and we don't realize that trauma is seeping into every part of our lives. So just every
Yeah.
day you wake up and you check in with yourself. Check it. How does your body feel? Is there a specific area of your body? Is your tummy hurting? Why do you think your tummy is hurting all the time? Usually trauma response comes through the belly. You
Hmm.
didn't eat anything funny. You didn't do anything different, but your stomach's been hurting for 4 days. Is there something you're not addressing? And if you start to check in with yourself, you'll start to know that. And that is the number one thing for sure.
Oh, I love that. And uh, tell us how to show up for the Rise Up Against Domestic Violence March. Like, when is it happening? What roles are there? What do you need? Uh,
Absolutely.
Donations. Where can people go?
Yes. Yes. So anybody can visit the riseupagainstdv.org page, which was actually created by Light Air Media. Ben did a phenomenal job. We have a whole website there. You can find not only our promo video, you can find our YouTube channel. You can find there's a fact sheet or a fact area that you can ask. Pretty much any question that you may have will be there. We have a volunteer and donate button that will also lead you to a Google form, which is a little bit more specific. So if you would like to donate, you would like to volunteer, you would like to be a fiscal partner, a fiscal sponsor, whether you want to participate, any of those things you can access through that. But our biggest thing is that we want people to show up and amplify this, because how do we get change is by amplification and people actually talking about this. How do we create this movement to be long-term and actually not just sustainable, but actually be impactful, is that we need people to amplify this. We want people to show up, whether it's for you or for somebody that you love, or you just want to be there. We want people to show up. We want people to engage with this. We want people to build in this community, and we want people to feel safe here. So how we want people to do that is amplify it. Let's talk about it. Come to the march, visit the website, see how you would like to offer your service, whether it is donating or volunteering. We are just looking for as much amplification, because again, that creates change and movement.
Hmm. And if people want to participate in the actual march, when and where do they show up?
If people want to participate in the march, they don't have to do anything. They just show up on October 25th. At 11 a.m. We are going to be starting with about a 30-minute opener, and then we're going to walk. We are starting at 5th Ave and Thomas to the east of Mopop right around Seattle Center. We'll walk up to Mercer. We'll walk to First Ave North, and then we'll come down and end at Climate Pledge. And the reason why, and I've loved to share this part too, is that music is healing. Music's pretty much saved my entire life before I found my relationship with my creator, right? Was like, all right, this is the only person that hears me. These people are the only ones I can resonate with. So the biggest part for me is like where that starts is sometimes we can't talk to anybody, but we can listen to music, and we can at least find some shelter there. So that was a big part for me, of starting it there and ending it where it's ending. So we're going to march. It was going to be peaceful. The whole point of it is not to be a protest. It is a free speech event. We want people to feel safe. We don't need people yelling and screaming. We're going to we have not officially partnered yet, but we will have music going throughout the parade route, whether it's completely with us as we go or in different areas of the parade route. We are going to have music involved in the parade, or in the march. But we want people to feel safe. We want people to feel like that community is exactly where they should be on that day. And how they can help us is, if you have a nonprofit in the state of Washington that can offer services. This is the biggest thing for me, right? Outside of getting people to actually participate and talk about DV and actually having these survivors know they're safe, is that we need these local resources to come forward. We know what's happening with these federally funded grants, and we know what's happening with these these larger nonprofits. They may be getting more money or they're getting things cut, and these smaller nonprofits are what we need to push and find for these survivors, because they actually have the resources. They have the spaces for people. They can offer therapy. They can offer assistance. They can offer housing. These are the people that we need to come forward.
Love it. Okay, so it's Seattle, Washington, October 25th, 2025, 11 a.m. Meet at 5th and Thomas in the Seattle Center.
Yep.
Go to riseupagainstdv.org for more details. You can also sign up for a mailing list so you can get updates there.
Yes.
And this is going to be something special.
It's a movement. We're just getting started. But how we create the movement to start the ball, right, is that we actually show up. So we are asking that people show up, whether it's for one of the versions of your inner child, whether it's for the grandparent that you have that's being mistreated, whether it's for a lost sister. We show up. We show up. We rise together.
Yeah. And what do we wear?
We would love to see people in purple, but if you don't have purple, please don't go buy anything special. We want you to show up and just be who you are, but purple would be beautiful because it is the color that represents domestic violence awareness. And so October is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so I'm going to be rocking out as much purple as I can possibly get my hands on, but we just want people to show up. If all you have is you to show up, that's all we want.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for being on the show here today. And I wish we were in person so I could give you a big hug.
Air hugs. Air hugs to Ben. You're so amazing. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for helping us amplify it, because Ben, we would not be able to do this with voices like yours that are helping us to lift ours up. So thank you.
Of course, it's my honor. And we'll put more details in the description here. So check it out. And thanks for listening. And thank you, Danielle. Until next time.
Until next time, Ben. Aloha.